Hey everybody. LinkedIn is not what I wanted to be showing here. OpenSauced. There we go. We're gonna get started here in a second. I'm just assembling the Avengers here. We got B Dougie who's just joining right now. Just gonna bring him in. We'll get started in just a second here. Oh, okay. We'll bring B Dougie in a sec. You'll be back in a second. I'm gonna bring John in. We've had a very busy week in case people haven't noticed. So we're uh, we're excited that we're here today, but yeah, I think we're all gonna be looking forward to a bit of sleep. Hey John, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good.
Cool,
My
cool. I'm gonna
my way
oh yeah?
ready.
All right, cool. Okay, I see B Dougie's back. All right, let's bring B Dougie in. Okay. Hey, how's it going, B Dougie?
I'm exceptional. Just eating my pizza.
Yeah, I gotta say, I got pizza
Ooh,
here too. Oh wow, it's like
ooh.
okay. I guess I'm gonna check. I know Becca's just joining us, but if both of you want to kind of tell us what's on the menu for pizza wise for both of you.
Yeah. So today I've got a. How do you do this? There we go. There we go. I gotta get it to zoom. Man, this is not good. No, it's actually great. It's pepperoni, sausage, and red onion,
Oh,
and it's
nice.
from a place called Arthur Max.
Okay.
And this is a place in Oakland. It's like a few blocks away from me. Exceptional. If you're
Okay.
ever in Oakland, we gotta stop through. It's like it, John. When you were in Oakland a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
I would have had you guys come to my neighborhood, but I was like, we got a lot of a lot of back and forths
Yeah.
with Microsoft and Teams. So, but next time,
Next time for sure.
Cool, cool. And
That
what do you got on the menu, John?
so this is a place called Chaos Pizzeria, also in our neighborhood in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
It's really good. It's kind of a thinner style pizza, and this is like a jalapeno goat cheese bacon one.
Ooh, that
Um,
sounds really good.
and the goat cheese clumps are delectable. Real good stuff. Yeah.
Cool, cool. All right. I'll go up next yet. So I tried this pizza here. I've got a bacon, sausage, pepperoni, and cheese, and it's from a local place called Chicago Pizza. I'm actually not positive if this is actually Chicago style pizza or if it's just the name because I was reading on the website. It's Chicago Pizza Montreal.ca, I think. Um, and I couldn't get any clarity on if it's a Chicago style pizza or not, or if they just use that name because I don't actually know if I've ever had Chicago style pizza. I know there's deep dish pizza, but it's definitely not deep dish. This to me looks more like if we go through the forensic again here, it's got like it's not a thin crust, but it's just I don't know, regular crust. I don't know. I don't know what you call a regular
It did
crust.
look like Chicago style to me.
yeah,
Okay,
I think
so
the deep dish is like I think it's. I'm not a pizza expert, but I thought Chicago style and deep dish are distinctly different.
yeah,
Mhm.
Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
okay,
Usually Chicago style, they'll do the sauce like it's almost like an inside out pizza where it'll have like the sauce loosely
okay.
intertwined with the cheese on the top.
Oh,
Or they might just like put the sauce on it as they're like serving it to you. Um,
okay, gotcha.
I think I can imagine somebody in the comments being like, "He's full of crap. That's not Chicago style pizza."
Yeah, yeah. I was having this conversation yesterday, not about Chicago style pizza, but I'm curious on everybody's thoughts here about pepperoni under the cheese or on top. And the reason why I ask is because, like, growing up, there was this local pizzeria called Luna Pizzeria, and it was just something I associate with like a Friday night family dinner. You know, like when my parents were tired and didn't want to cook, and I grew up always having pepperoni under the cheese, and it still tasted really good. But as I don't know, as my pizza palate grew, like I guess other places I'd been to, a lot of them had the pepperoni on top, and I think the first time I might have had that is like when I went to the States, and I think it might have even been Pizza Hut, maybe Domino's, because we didn't have those in the early days here. And I really like that style too because then you get this kind of crunch on the pepperoni a bit too. So I'm curious if there's hills any of you want to die on in terms of pepperoni. So
Yeah, I feel like Papa John's does this. So I don't have like a local spot that comes to mind growing up, but Papa John's is a little excessive when it comes to the cheese. Will like cover the toppings and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that was one thing I do remember growing up. But I don't know. Like I have a preference. Like honestly,
okay.
I like all different types of. I'm the DEI of pizza.
Okay.
All types of pizza,
Yeah,
please.
I hear you.
Oh
I hear
man.
you. Cool,
I
cool.
do I do like when a pepperoni gets crispy, kind of crunchy. It's like
Yeah.
a s'more. When your marshmallow gets a little toasty, and
Okay,
then
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a little crunchy marshmallow in your s'more. That's a bad
And it's a
comparison, but
but
yeah.
it is a fine I get the comparison, and there's a fine line between like a totally torched marshmallow and like a perfect like
Yes.
crunch, and I feel like that could happen in pizza land too. I was gonna mention I just a DM Becca. She actually had a power failure at her house,
Oh
so
wow.
she's zipping over to her parents, and she's gonna connect up with us in a bit. So we can get started. I don't know if you want to kick us off, B Dougie, or if you want me to kind of give a quick summary of what happened during lunch week this week,
Yeah, why
or
don't you summarize the week? Because I'll be honest, I've always missed the beginnings of these, so I'm not really sure how y'all have been starting these.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, all right, cool. I'll get to the comments in a sec that I see already, but yeah. So we've been doing this lunch week all week. It's our play on a launch week that a lot of software companies do, like Supabase. I think of a launch week. I think of Supabase, and so we're doing a similar thing, but it's a fun play on the word. So lunch week is what
Ooh,
we've been doing all week.
that's
Yeah.
a nice pizza.
Oh,
Sorry,
let's see.
Brian was distracting me with pizza.
Cool. Now I'm distracted. Um, but yeah,
Launch
so we've
week,
had a
lunch week.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we've had a lunch week, and it's been going on all week. So I'm gonna go down to the bottom from where it all started back in the day. So on Monday we had becoming a maintainer course. We talked about that. There's links to all these things if you head over to the lunch week blog post, or not blog post, webpage. I'm gonna drop that in the chat. So yeah, day one we were talking about becoming a maintainer and talking about the course. And then we moved on to day two where we talked about Workspaces 1.5. So Workspaces is a new feature we introduced a little while back. There's been a lot of improvements to it. Uh, think of workspaces as this is a really a place where you want to house repositories that you want to keep track of, and this could be just yourself as an individual interested in some projects. Like we saw in the chat the other day, people were actually using it for comparing like libraries, for example. Like, hey, I like this CSS library or this one. Like, what's going on and stuff in there. Um, it's also used. It's really useful for an organization. So think of somebody like maybe like Veet or an org like that. But it's also something that's super useful to an OSPO, an open source program office, because they can kind of bring in all the stuff that they're monitoring, and they can kind of get some good some good not visualizations, what's the word I'm saying, kind of a good look of kind of what's going on in the org, because we have some really good metrics that get surfaced there, like an activity ratio. You can see like pull requests and issues, how many were like merged, closed. Won't go into all of that now. I definitely encourage you to just check out the lunch week's webpage, and you
Yeah,
can
I was
go
gonna
visit
say,
everything.
Nick, I'm gonna add some color to this as well because workspaces, like
Yeah,
everyone knows repos on GitHub, but then you have organizations. But like, there's a lot of enterprises, a lot of projects that have been around. Kubernetes has been an example, who have multiple organizations. How do you know what's happening in Kubernetes in one space? And it
yeah,
requires you to like have a bunch of tabs. When I was at GitHub, in the blog post I shared today, I was going to share this, but I ended up deleting it. But I was actually work with the Kubernetes team, or at least the SIG leaders, to like solve pain points that was missing at GitHub because they were all
yeah,
building OpenSauced for their own like solutions to like show like, hey, I did a good job, or
yeah,
hey, like the SIG group's like really growing and impacting in this ways, but you can't see that. So like you have repos, you have organizations, and workspaces is like the umbrella across all of those. So Microsoft has 65 organizations that they care about when it comes to open source, just open source. How does Microsoft see all that in one place? OpenSauced workspace. So want to provide that context as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for digging into that.
I'd even color it further. And I'm coming from my last job a year ago is at AWS, and if you look at any of the AWS orgs, it kind of ends up being like not a dumping ground, but like there's hundreds and hundreds of repos in individual orgs. So you almost get the opposite problem where you have like one mega ginormous org, and being able to like surface out anything inside of just that giant monstrosity can be really difficult. And I've seen, I played around with some use cases with workspaces for some of the AWS stuff where it's like, I care about like CDK stuff. So I could pop all the CDK repos from, AWS labs into a workspace and then get really good insights into what's happening in the CDK ecosystem, where really CDKs could just be their own org in themselves, right? But they all exist inside of a mono org, I guess, of all the repos and things. But yeah, I like the flexibility, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I'm really glad both of you took a couple minutes to talk there, because I got a bunch of bites out of my pizza. So I appreciate that.
There you go. You talk, we'll eat. It's fine.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, so that was day 2. And then and definitely check out the lunch week link that I dropped. I encourage you to check out all this stuff. And then kind of related to workspaces, because you can go to a repository page from within a workspace, is a repository page. And a repository page is really great because you get all these insights surfaced about a particular repository, like Kubernetes, for example, like John was talking about. There's lots of great metrics in there, especially the lottery factor, which is a super popular. Well, I think I don't know how popular. I just keep hearing people talk about it, so I'm saying it's popular. But the lottery factor, which I was gonna ask you yesterday, John, why was it called pony factor in some places? I couldn't figure out the pony. Like, did somebody fall off a pony or just leave on a pony? Or
yeah, it's something from the Apache Foundation. I'm gonna pull it up right now because it is something. It's a little like mathematical, I guess. Let me find the actual definition from the Apache Foundation. A higher pony factor means that a project has a good tolerance for continuing to survive if one or more of the core contributors leaves. Blah blah blah. Yeah, why is it called pony factor though? I think it has something to do with. I think it's a mathematical thing or something.
Okay. I'm gonna keep it in mind.
It's not intuitive. Like it's not like a standardized intuitive thing is what I'm trying to say. Like hearing about somebody winning the lottery and never touching a computer again in their life brings me a lot of personal joy. So I like to think of my friends and colleagues, going off and living their best life. It's had many of these names, pony factor. I saw one recently where they were calling it the Nebraska factor, which is a direct reference. I know, also not intuitive, but is a direct reference to that XKCD comic where there's like the whole ecosystem of open source. It's like a big tower of bricks, and there's one really important tiny brick, and it's pointing to it and says, maintained by one guy in Nebraska since 2007, holding up the entire ecosystem. So that one guy in Nebraska, the Nebraska factor, we get the idea. So we call it lottery factor because it feels intuitive, but also people going off living their best lives. I like to think of it that way.
Yeah, you could become a goat farmer and put your own cheese on your pizza in the future. Maybe, who knows?
That sounds honestly. Say less. I wouldn't mind having my own goat cheese.
Yeah, definitely.
Fresh from the source.
Yeah, it's all about source. Cool. So yeah,
open source.
Definitely check that out. Yeah. And then yesterday, we talked about Star Search, and also I'm gonna just drop a link to. We had a product hunt launch yesterday. I don't know if you want to speak to that, B. Dougie, before we talk about Star Search.
Yeah. Product hunt launch. Sorry, I was to jump in. Product hunt launch number 3 of the day. It's like, is product hunt worth it? I don't know, but we did it, and we did it once before. Uh, what I think the success from that is really 193 comments. Like folks came through, tried it out, and I think Star Search really speaking to it's easy to like jump in and just like ask a question and see how it works or watch the quick videos we all made. Also, shout out to
Yeah.
the team. If you go onto YouTube, you'll see a playlist of like all these demos of Star Search. So everyone here, I just actually shipped mine this morning. But yeah, so everyone here shipped a little demo of like how we use Star Search, like what's our own personal like approach to using this tool. And yeah, so hats off to everyone who upvoted yesterday. I really appreciate you coming through and answering my DM or someone else's DM to say, hey, come through and like give us an upvote. Because the alternative is we could have just bought a bunch of votes, which I'm pretty sure some people did. But you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, no, yeah, lots of great comments, like you said. And yeah, it was Star Search, and so Star Search, if I can give it like the less than 15-second elevator pitches, we're coining it as Copilot for Git history. And I don't know if you want to just talk a bit more about that, B Dougie, or John, or I can do it myself. But I feel
Yeah,
like
I can share the broader vision, which is so John has a great video where he talks about how we built this, and in that video we talk about Ed McMahon. It's like when I was a kid, I used to like my grandma used to pick us up from school, or it'd be like on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, we'd hang out with her, and we watch
yeah,
all like Price is Right, and one of the shows we'd watch is called Star Search, and like Beyonce, Ryan Gosling, Justin Timberlake, all discovered from the show as kids. So like, what if you could do that for developers? And
yeah,
that was the idea there. So like we've been thanks to like the work that John's been doing the last 6 months, like we built a time series database to capture GitHub events directly from the source. And from there, it's like we had all this data. So then we built all these dashboards and these cool like repository pages. But
yeah,
what next? Like, what do you do with this? And the idea is like you can now have actionable insights. So ask the question about the projects and the contributors you care about and get
hmm,
some sort of data back to say, okay, this is cool. So now you have, we were talking about pony factor, lottery factor. If that's a thing that you understand, now you can ask that question, the Star Search, like, okay, what are like, give me the, well, we can ask this today, but give me the list of all high lottery factor projects within this organization. Um,
yeah,
like that's where we end up going down the road eventually, or identify who are the folks in Nebraska that are like highly vulnerable. And like, if you leave the project, like this project's never gonna, like
yeah,
all the brain trust is gonna leave. So that's the idea that we started with. So like take the data, provide actual insights through natural language, which is a chat interaction. But I'm excited like how we integrate this in our actual product moving forward. It'll be elegant. It'll show up in different places. And like we have this, it is AI. So if you want to call it AI, um,
yeah,
but like we wanted to create a sandbox environment that you could like try this out. But eventually, what it is really is just like extra features and extra insight where I happen to know a bunch of random people in open source and know who to talk to, but you can't always answer. I can't answer every DM. Like I'm not going to be able to jump on the phone and chat with all these folks. So
yeah.
now you have that extension to be knowledgeable within open source without any friction.
Yeah, totally. And me and John were talking about this yesterday during the stream. It's like a lot of this data is in GitHub, but it's just it's not surfaced in a way that you can, get a good context on a particular thing. And I think that's one of the great things about this is like, and not just not just Star Search, but like even the graphs and metrics we're pulling in, these are all things that like you could maybe figure out how to build some of those things, but it would be super tedious and take a long time to. And like I just like how we're just and it's definitely thanks to a lot of the work John's done in terms of like the time series database, like just and also just having like super fresh up to date information. Like I was telling people yesterday, like you open up an issue, it's going to show up in one of our charts or graphs or tables like 2 to 5 minutes from the time it gets created. So I think that's another testament to just like all the great work that's been happening. And I just want to take a second to say hello to, there's a bunch of people in the chat. Hey Hijabi Coder, hey Christy, how you doing? And Emmett, nice to see you, man. And uh, everybody's asking about the pizzas, and yeah, I don't have any pineapple on my pizza. I know it's a Canadian invention, but it's I don't know about either of you, but I don't mind Hawaiian pizza, but it's not like my favorite thing. Like I'll eat it, but it's not like my go-to or ever my go-to.
Yeah, same. Like there's a great, so going back to Arthur Max. So shout out to Arthur
Yeah.
Max. Our very first pizza bite we did was at Arthur Max, and so Pizza Bites are our YouTube series with the developer
Oh yeah.
influencers, and we actually ate the Hella Hawaiian is what they call it, and it had like jalapenos, which I had not had Hawaiian with jalapenos before, but and Canadian bacon.
Yeah.
Um, it's good. You should try it, but I guess what I'm getting at is it's not my first choice.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop this in real quick here. We're gonna move on to the next announcement, which is today and what's happening today. Just let me pop for anybody interested in Pizza Bite. Let's bring this back. I'll bring us back to where we were, not Pizza Bite. Cool. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so we talked about Star Search, and that kind of brings us to today. And I'm definitely gonna let you go ahead and talk here, V Dougie. So
Yeah,
yeah, so Friday dessert.
dessert. Not leftovers yet, but dessert. This is
Yeah.
where we go first. Yeah, so we actually raised a round of funding, and this is something that we've kind of really kept, like we did this last year, so we've been sitting on this a bit, but really the feature is never fundraising. The feature is like what happens with this fundraising, and what happened when we raised funding is we got to hire more folks on the team. We got to explore deeper insights into our technology, build out some infrastructure, and that's what really helped us kickstart. So moving
Mm-hmm.
forward, now we get to go deeper into this exploration into like what do we do with AI? Like how do we start adding models into different parts of our application to make it elegant and not be something that we feel like we need to do something because AI is a hotness. So we're gonna have like AI, open source
Yeah.
AI, everything. So just want to shout out Bullstar Ventures led around. If anybody's familiar with Sneak, also Superhuman. Bullstar Ventures is a dev tool investor. They do a lot of security investments, and they're all about inception investing. So if you haven't followed, if you don't know who Ed Sim is, like a lot of us are developers, so like I don't imagine everyone knows who these investors are, but Ed and Elliot come from the 2000s and worked at
Mm-hmm.
big companies and now have been involved in a bunch of other big companies, and like they're great storytellers. They've got great vision, and inception investing is basically everyone thinks about seed or angel investing. It's first check, end the goal, like in the gate, pre-product. And the thing that I love about our journey is like we actually started without a product. Like we started with
Yeah.
just an idea. Like OpenSauced existed as like a side project that was a React app, but like we actually we killed that. It's actually archived today. It's like got almost 1,000 stars, but it's just sitting there because
Yeah.
I wanted to start like what would be the thing that actually provide value to the community, that provide value to companies, and what it was stories. Like how do we tell stories out of open source data? So the first
Yeah.
thing we did is we when we raised the original amount of the investment is we bought cameras. We bought cameras because I knew if I could talk to open source insiders and maintainers and stakeholders, I could find out the secret sauce. So we started a podcast called The Secret Sauce before we had shipped anything within the current open source app today. And then we
Yeah.
found out, okay, there's a signal here. And one of the stories that we discovered early on was Stripe. So Stripe, I actually mentioned this in what we call as the bus factor video. Now we're going to use lottery factor, but Stripe had a SDK called DJ Stripe that had been maintained for years, Django SDK. It's not actually in the organization of Stripe. It's called DJ Stripe, and it's in the DJ Stripe organization. But when we I don't know why there's fireworks going off. I don't know what is it that weird Apple
Oh,
thing.
oh, it is. Did it go off on me? Oh yeah.
No, that
It
was
always
me, but and it
okay.
froze my camera, so I'll have to reset that thing.
It freezes my
Amazing.
camera too. Yeah.
I got to figure out how to
Technology
turn that
really.
off. But so DJ Stripe, when we talked to Stripe, in 6 months they had one contributor. So think of that lottery factor. One contributor maintaining what was X amount of millions of dollars of business, like revenue going through Stripe. So like that was like eye opening. And this is stuff that we did before even the podcast. Like we had this conversation with folks
Yeah.
at stakeholders at Stripe. But then we had a conversation with DigitalOcean of like, hey, how do you like? It's a lot of spam. Like, how do you identify what's happening within Hacktoberfest? Like, we had a story.
Yeah.
That's our original product. So as we built all these stories, we had all these conversations with other folks that I can't divulge of these conversations just yet. Like, there's an opportunity there, and that opportunity is why we raise money, because now we have a thing
Yeah.
that we could build and we know we can scale. So we went and raised $3.5 million. So That's today's announcement, and it's on the back of Star Search intentionally, because the next thing is going to be even bigger and even more exciting. So just appreciate everyone who's been supporting us in open source. We couldn't do this without our 300 plus contributors that we've had over the years. We couldn't do it without the community in our Discord, with the folks who have been like editing our documentation and our guides. Part of the reason like we sponsor folks to do stuff like that is because of this funding. Like we do have some runway to inject some interest in resource to folks. So if you're at all interested in being part of our community, we do have a Discord, discord.gg/OpenSauce. Becca, who's going to, oh, you're back.
Yeah, she's
has
back.
been doing a great job in like this being, I call myself chief sauce officer, but I don't know what Becca's title, official title is. But yeah, the leader of the pizza heads.
Yeah.
I've never said pizza head out loud, but I always wanted our the nomenclature of our of our people to be pizza heads, because I feel like it's it rolls off the tongue. But
pizza heads, that's what we're going with. All right, so you heard it first today. The pizza heads.
I always pictured us as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just because of pizza, but I'm okay with pizza heads too, or turtles with pizza heads.
So there's a saying, or sorry, there's an analogy or a story I always share. It's like you got to throw out the worst idea first, because otherwise no one will have feedback. So if you like throw it out there and no one says it's bad, then you just keep running. Like you just keep moving forward. So like in Hollywood, like if you want to pitch a director, like your shot, you're gonna pitch something worse, so that way he'll say yes to the second thing, because usually directors will always want to say no, so they'll say no first and let's say yes. So the example is like you have you pitch the director, I'm gonna have an opening shot, the camera's gonna come in, it's gonna be an actor sitting on a bench in a park, and we're gonna have a helicopter, and the helicopters are coming from the hills of California down to Santa Monica to the park and the pier where this actor is like eating some sandwich with pigeons and roller skaters, and the director's like, "Hold on, stop! Helicopter? How much? Just $1 million. Take it out. Static shot. Oh yeah, so we're gonna have a static shot of this," and then they get to say yes, and you get to make your movie. So I'll say pizza heads because someone has to say something better, or else that's it. Y'all are pizza heads.
It reminds me of I don't know if anybody watches. I haven't watched Saturday Night Live in a while, but when Andy Samberg was on there, he did this skit with Bill Hader, and it was a parody, obviously, but they go to Lorne Michaels, who for folks who don't know SNL, anyways, he runs SNL, Saturday Night Live, and so like their whole thing is okay, kind of like what you're saying, pitching to a director. So like we have these cats, and they have lasers, and they fire out of their eyes, and it's like it's so ridiculous. I mean, it's really well done, but it just made me think of your example there. But
I got another one. Saucezillions, kind of like Sicilian, but it's like sauce first.
Okay.
Boo.
Well, as soon as you said zillion, all I was thinking of was like Godzilla, but like I don't know, throwing out flames and tomato sauce. But I don't know. We can work it maybe.
Sauce stars.
I've been going with open saucers.
Ooh, that's fine.
Open saucers actually is it kind of makes more sense than pizza heads.
Yeah. Pizza Heads, though, would be a good name if we had a band, kind of like the Talking Heads or something, or the Pizza Heads. And yeah, John can play bass. I'll play.
Those were the question from yesterday.
Yeah.
I did realize just because like I know your power went out, Becca, and I'm glad you're able to get back. But we kind of we forgot to introduce ourselves, even though like we all know each other. So like we kind of the intro part kind of got derailed. So I see B Dougie's in my top left square there. So like for folks who like literally have no idea who any of us are, let's maybe just say like as open saucers, who are you, open saucer number one?
Open saucer number one, that's me. Yeah, so Brian Douglas, go by B Dougie. I imagine most folks who are watching this have heard of me, but maybe we always, it's like Stan Lee's got the quote of imagine every issue is someone's first issue. And I live by that when it comes to GitHub. Like I want to have context in your issue always. But my intro, sorry, going back to my intro, B. Dougie, I'm the chief sauce officer, founder of OpenSauced. Started this like a couple years ago. Well, 2017, I got the domain OpenSauced.pizza because I was doing so many open source contributions, which is like a weird flex, that I just wanted to like have a place where I could see all the PRs in one dashboard. So that was the original product. It was a side project built in React and GraphQL. And since then, I got a job. Actually, got a job at GitHub because of that project. I spoke at GitHub Universe about that project. And then Kyle Daigle, who's now the chief operating officer, reached out to me and said, you should work at GitHub. So that's basically how that story goes. And then spent 5 years at GitHub thinking about this problem, thinking about how we could solve this at GitHub. And then eventually saying, hey, I think I'm going to go ahead and craft up a team of Saucillians and really go ham on this. Ham and Canadian bacon.
Yeah, no pineapple, no pineapple.
Yeah.
John, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Saucillian the second here. No, I'm just kidding. I joined OpenSauce about a year ago with some of the existing engineering team, and I guess my official title is senior software engineer. But I've been heading up a lot of the stuff in the back end and the data, and now AI and ML, where my main focus, has been bringing Star Search from, I guess, conception to fruition. And the beginning of that was building data pipelines, and now actually doing a bunch of prompt engineering with what we have and what we've built. So it's been an incredible journey seeing it, go from crazy idea. It didn't seem that crazy, but I was like, man, this is going to be crazy. to now it's now you can interact with it and work with it and get some really good insights and things from it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, ship to learn, right? Ship to
learn. Yeah.
Cool. Open saucer number 3. Do you want to go ahead?
I assume that is me. Hey, I am Becca. I'm the developer experience lead, also known as the technical AI advocate over on LinkedIn. I am now streaming from this is actually my childhood bedroom. So welcome here. My power, Nick was like, we're going live. And then my power just totally shut off in my house. And they were like, they said the power company was like, we might be back on by 6 p.m. So nice to have family in the area. I have been at OpenSauce since April of last year. And so you can check out the content that I've been working on our blog over on Dev2 and our education path on intro.opensauce.pizza.
Cool. I'll go next. Yes.
Nick, open saucer number 4.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw out ideas here that you can shoot down. I'm thinking maybe Sir Sauce a lot, but maybe that should be reserved for Chief Sauce Officer. That's hard to say.
You can have it. Sir Sauce a lot is it suits you.
All right. Okay. All right. Sir Sauce a lot it is then. My name is Nick Taylor. Pretty much leading up front end over at OpenSauce right now. Dipping my toes a bit in stuff in the API, and I am looking to ramp up on all things AI because I just updated my LinkedIn to become an AI engineer. So that's my way to force myself to ramp up. Been really excited about all the stuff we've been building. I joined OpenSauce last fall, September 18th, I believe, or 19th. But I've been a big fan of the project for a long time. Me and B. Dougie go back a few years. I used to work at Dev2. That's where I first connected with him, and I started contributing to the project even before I started working there. And just really liked what they were doing over there, and opportunity came up to work there, and took the I don't know, do people know what the Nestea plunge is, that commercial? But anyways, I took the plunge. And just went for it, and no regrets, as they say, or that guy with the tattoo on the no regrets. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, but it's been a lot of fun, and I honestly couldn't be more prouder of the team, and like we've just been gelling well, shipping stuff, and it's honestly been a lot of fun. So
How can we make the ride more wild? I ask myself that every day.
Yeah, add
yeah,
AI.
More AI. Yeah.
yeah,
Meta. We gotta make it meta.
yeah.
Meta sauce.
Cool, cool. I'm just doing a time check here. We got about 20 minutes because I
Yeah,
know Brian, you have a hard stop for some meetings, but
yeah. I was
yeah, I
gonna.
guess we're
I wanted to because you mentioned your technical AI advocate. Should we talk about like why we're all AI engineers?
yeah,
You
let's do it.
yes, we should.
Yeah. So somebody got a DM about this. Was it you, Becca, asking like why we all haven't changed our job titles? Uh,
Yep.
so here's the thing: we did a product hunt launch yesterday. I happen to know almost too much about being an influencer on the internet. Ironically, I'm not an influencer. I don't think I am. Um, but there's a little bit of a trick when you change your job on LinkedIn. It like spams every single person that follows you and has like ever interacted with you, even more so than any other type of post on the algorithm. So
Yeah.
I won't tell you who told me about this, but I know someone high up at the LinkedIn circles, um, that if you do this on your day of your product hunt launch, it's a good extra boost of like attention. And like if you also like ship a big feature. So you didn't hear from us. Everyone delete this part of we're gonna scrub the recording.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in the same vein, like it's kind of ironic, but also coincidence that, or is it maybe unintentional that we all switched to be AI engineers? Because like we have actually, thanks to John, learned a ton about the space and learned a ton about vector spaces and semantic search and VLLMs. And I think that's actually
Mhm.
a bit of our secret sauce is that we did take some time to like level set on what we're doing. Because like we could
Yeah.
have just like installed OpenAI and like called it a day, but we actually approach this in a way that's like meaningful, but also not hallucinogenic. And I would say my camera's gonna freeze now. Um,
Yeah.
and I do want to say, and I'll reset my my camera. If someone send me the doc on how to turn on off these like camera things in Mac OS Sonoma. Um, so sorry, actually, one pause, and I'll say this out loud. I probably should say this in the Slack, but hallucinations and AI is actually kind of awkward to say. Microsoft is actually really pushing towards the idea of ungroundedness or groundedness. So actually, moving forward, I'll
Okay.
just probably say grounded for that reason. But like our AI is grounded in actual real data. Like we have like terabytes of data in GitHub events and pull requests and
Mhm.
issues that we've just been sourcing because we wanted to solve the problem of just having eyes into this open source data. But now it's all grounded in that. Then when you're asking questions, you're not getting like, oh yeah, Nick is the maintainer of Kubernetes. But Nick might have said like Kubernetes is fun on Twitter or something, and now the AI thinks Nick's an expert in Kubernetes. So I don't know. I'm going to keep my title as AI engineer for a little bit because I'm going to be deep diving and doing more investigation on how this world works.
Yeah, and I'll also say that, our partnership with Microsoft and the Microsoft Innovation Lab, where we were able to do a bunch of ramp up, I think was really critical in this as well. Just getting some of the download on like how we can start shipping some of this stuff. Some of the techniques, like what the heck prompt engineering even is. Like my background is not AI or ML. It's mostly Linux and like platforms, like Kubernetes platforms and stuff. I think that was actually to my advantage, given how much data. Really, in the end, it's a bunch of software, but it's a bunch of software that has, like we said, terabytes and terabytes of data flowing through it that then
Yeah.
powers that groundedness, that context that can give you really good, aware answers in Star Search. So I endorse this all being AI engineers because, um, yeah, I think it's a good future for the platform given just the mass unstructured nature of the data. It's really hard to like sift through a lot of that text and give it structure without using something like a large language model. So um, endorsed.
Yeah. No, and I'm definitely sticking with it too because one, like, I mean, prompt engineering is one part of it. Like I use Copilot all the time. I use ChatGPT, Gemini. Like that's part of it. But I also just want to dig deeper into these things now too. So, like I said, an intentional nudge for me to just level up. So and honestly, I think it's going to become a necessity to become an AI engineer anyways. So that's what I would say. And I'm not sure if Becca is super still or frozen. I'll
Can you see me?
I can see you frozen. Oh, you're moving again.
Maybe I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay. You got out of the Han Solo deep freeze.
There you go. I think you caught
Yeah,
up.
so I genuinely I think that there's a lot of great things that we're doing with AI, and that there's a really nice future with the technology that we're doing, with the insights that we're providing, and what we can do. And even, John sent me a bunch of resources on prompt engineering, and my background is in teaching college English. And I was like, oh, this all makes really good sense to me. Like, I can
Yeah.
understand what's happening here. And I feel like we're at a place where there are a lot of feelings about AI and how companies use AI, whether or not they should. And there's a bridge that needs to be built between, us a couple of years ago and the future that includes AI. And I think that a lot of that requires good communication and understanding. And so I feel pretty strongly that it's a good space to be in right now, and that it's very useful. I told the team, I have a 14-year-old, and I was driving my 14-year-old and his friends home the other day. And one of them has been a Java developer for the past 5 years. And I mean this in all seriousness. Like, he's actually genuinely good at what he does. And anytime he sees me, he's like, you have inspired me. I'm like, I know nothing about Java. He's like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, okay. Um, but so he was like, yeah, I think a really big impact on game development is going to be AI. And he's like very concerned about this. And I was talking to him about like what we're doing with AI and what we've done with Star Search. And I said, yeah, like you can connect with other people, you can ask questions. And he was like, this is exactly what I need, because I don't know who to connect to or how to connect with people, because he's 14 years old and he doesn't know who the right developers to connect with. So jokingly, I was like, we've got those high schoolers, right? They definitely want to use Star Search, but it's true, right? Like, it's the people who are using it right now, but it's also looking to the future of folks who are utilizing AI, who are interested in doing this. And like, he started with Scratch. He met everyone on his team of developers through Scratch, which I think is just like wild. And they've been developing games for 5 years. He's like, yeah, I'm the physics engineer and the sound engineer, or it's physics and sound physics and UI. That's what he does. Sound physics and UI engineer. And I'm like, that's fantastic that those are the things that you're doing. But talking about these things and like thinking about the total landscape is super important.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned this 14-year-old, because I've got a story that during the pandemic, I have a friend who's local, and he worked at Twitter. I got acquired from Periscope. So he worked at Periscope as a early engineer at Periscope, got acquired, worked at Twitter, and then what they built really is Twitter Spaces today. And he left during right before the pandemic. It was like, I'm going to do something else. So was in between jobs or his next startup, and the pandemic hit. So he just got really interested in doing side projects, because he's okay to not work. So started working on OBS. So Nick, you had shared your video about OBS and lottery factor and stuff like that. OBS previously to the pandemic, or even in the middle of the pandemic, would not work. The virtual cam did not work for the Mac. So things like video and everything like this, we're using video for this, for, I guess, peel back the pizza and show off the secret sauce. But what I'm getting at is he saw a problem and he's like, I'm going to solve this. We should get OBS to work for the Mac. So he went and got in the code, because he could do C++, started working on it. And he started opening up issues in the repo, because I'm going to do this. He didn't say, I'm John, I'm going to do whatever. His name's Sean. And, but he just started working on it. And then he saw some other, a kid, which he found out later was a 16-year-old, was like, hey, I want to help you with this, because this is actually interesting. I do gaming, whatever, I know code. Mm-hmm. So he started pairing with this kid, guy who's got a successful exit, worked at Twitter, just kind of working on a little side project open source is now pairing with this kid, and they solved it together. Like now OBS Virtual Cam works in the Mac. It's now embedded in the actual main core project of OBS now because it merged in. And it was because it's like a little side quest that John took with a 16-year-old. Where now John told me, he's like, that 16-year-old's got a mentor for life. He's got an advocate. Like if he needs a job or a recommendation, needs to go, like he's in college now. Like he's got a giant advocate in Silicon Valley from this one little experience. And I think that, so like kids running Java, building like physics engines and making games, like how do we connect those folks to like all these impactful folks within open source or within enterprise or et cetera? And a lot of times you got to like get on Twitter and like, or do a Twitch show or do things like this. But what if you could just do your code and get noticed?
Yeah.
And that's what I see. Like we can now really sort of open this up for folks who don't need to be influencers. It's like, if you're interested in something, say what you're interested in, and like we'll find you.
Yeah, totally. And side note, thank you, John, and whoever that kid is, because all of you are looking at the virtual camera running on a Mac right now in Video Ninja. So we're also running OBS for those who are curious. But yeah, no, that's an amazing story, and I, like I'm not a kid anymore, but honestly, my career trajectory changed immensely as soon as I started contributing to open source. Like the last 3 jobs I've had, including this one, like I worked at Dev2. I got hired there because I liked the project, I contributed to it, and then at one point they were just like, well, we need somebody and you're always in our repo, so it just kind of makes sense, and Netlify was a similar thing where they just saw like I was contributing a lot to open source, and like coming full circle to OpenSauced, I was a big fan of the project and the projects for a while, and it just made sense. So I definitely think it's a game changer. I never want to say it guarantees people getting jobs in open source, but I will say I'm 3 for 3 so far. Sir Sauce a lot out.
Yeah. No, I think, there's a lot of potential here, and we're providing a lot of avenues at OpenSauced. I hope for folks to find places to find people and connections. And I think like ultimately that's what it comes down to. And I was talking to John on Wednesday, I think, and we were just talking about the ability to connect with other people. And, even so, John, I wrote the blog post for Star Search yesterday, and it was, like thinking about like, okay, so what are we thinking about in terms of like this could be super helpful? What are the scenarios? And John was talking about this idea of like, well, what if you needed to make upstream changes? How do you figure out who you talk to? And like as you dig into it and you think about it, like there's a lot of detective work that goes into trying to figure out who do you talk to to get your question answered, right? Especially because so much of us depend on open source software, and it's a lot. It can be hours or more of your time, and being able to connect people much more quickly is incredibly beneficial, like not just for resolving your own problems, but for resolving many of the problems that we all face in open source or the projects that we're working on in tech, because talking to other people ultimately gets things resolved no matter where you're at. Somebody always has an answer out there. It's about finding the right person with the answer. And, that can be a challenge otherwise.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I've lived that, like when I was working at AWS and VMware working on Kubernetes and stuff. It was really challenging to find any of those like personnel resources that were basically required to upstream something into one of the special interest groups. And I think a lot of these big communities have sort of shifted away from the way that most people use GitHub, really, or even how like like the Linux kernel has the mailing list. Some projects like OpenSauced have issues and pull requests, but then like hyperscale projects like Kubernetes, you basically have to show up to a special interest group meeting, talk to somebody, get some buy-in from some people who all work at like different companies. There's Google, there's Red Hat, there's IBM, etc. And being able to just like skip for those steps and be like, oh, I need to like connect with this person and not just like open an issue and then it gets closed by a bot, or, I can't figure out like when the calendar is for this special interest group. Just like figure out who this person is, maybe like figure out a contact for them and get some insight, and skip a few of those initial steps. Also, and this is a hot take, I sort of believe that GitHub is sort of just getting started. I think that as far as like developers on the platform and projects on the platform, it's not even reached like hyperscale yet at where like most things are on GitHub. I think as the years go on, GitHub is just going to become more and more the centralized place to do that. And maybe 5, 10, 15 years from now, that platform will shift or the name will shift or something, but it's all going open source. And yeah, those communities of people I think are finding themselves on GitHub. So yeah, it starts to make more sense as we like continue to scale up Star Search and give people those capabilities to make those connections, right?
Yeah, no, well said. I just want to do a time check for you, B. Dougie. We got about 5 minutes left. We still good to talk a few minutes?
Yeah. I got a few minutes. I'll need to drop off just a couple minutes before the end of the hour or top of the hour.
Okay.
But yeah, I just like the like there are like so many journeys and stories, and like I think what happens, and I think what we're going to be working on next is like when a PR gets merged, the story ends. So like, how do we keep that story alive? Like, how do we go back into the history and say, you know what, I've done open source. How do I tell a story that I did a PR 4 years ago? Actually, 7 years ago, I did the PR on the React Native when I fixed an error message. But that journey was like, I actually was really, really into doing mobile development. Like my first ever app I wanted to build was because my son was 11 weeks early. We were in the hospital. I wanted to build a mobile app to find churches 25 miles from my house. I always wanted to build mobile. And then what I did is I learned Ruby on Rails and then eventually JavaScript. And I was like, oh, I got to learn iOS and C++. And at that point, that year I was learning this was Swift. I was like, oh, I want to build a mobile app. And then React Native came out. And so like that was my journey is I can now be a competent developer just by using the tools I know. But all those PRs I did previously, like I forgot about that React Native PR until GitHub had the Arctic Code Vault, and I saw React Native as one of my contributions. Yeah. And I was like, well, what did I do there? And then I was like, oh, I'm pretty cool. I do open source. But yeah, I would love to like we continue to tell these stories and these journeys of like your story of Nick of like being in a repo, getting a job from Dev 2 to eventually Netlify, now OpenSauced. Or John, your story of like this, like solving a problem because this bothered you. And like Becca, you've got tons of stuff you've done in the open source, like with Virtual Coffee, but also even the apps you've built. Like those are stories that we would love to tell as like a broader story. But then think about enterprises. Like they also have an open source story. Like tons of fintechs are involved in open source because like, frankly, because compliance. If you could show what you're touching, like it's easy to check that box for compliance. So think of all the biggest banks and credit cards are all in the open source. They're FinOps Foundation. Like their stories also need to be told. Like when we used to see, so I'm going to ramble until I had to jump off, but when you remember the old Apple keynotes and you had like Johnny Ive and he would bring up his team and be like, hey, and so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. You know what they don't do anymore since Steve Jobs? They don't bring up the team and say, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. And that's like a missing part when it comes into building and developers. Like you always get the product head or the product leader, but everyone's sort of left out of that story. Now we can tell that story. So I told you about Star Search and I sit on my grandma's couch, but I've got another story where I got this cassette tape of from Skilo, which is I wish I was a little bit taller. And like it was the first cassette tape I ever got. I remember going from Sam Goody Music in the front seat of my mom's car, looking at the back of that cassette tape, reading all the songs and who wrote what. Like think of that for software. Like you go install an API and you're like, oh, who made this? Like who was involved? Like where are the credits? And that's what we're really building for OpenSauced. So like we can tell that full-on story when after the PR gets merged or after the release is cut. So I just want to thank everyone here on the call as I close this out on the stream I was invited to. Yeah, I think we're doing like a really, really interesting thing. And I'm really happy that folks are along for the ride and they've been active in our comments and issues on Twitter, in our Discord. So I feel like I'm gonna close this out because I have to actually jump off to go to the
do it. Meeting. Go for it.
Close this out.
Yeah. So stay saucy, y'all.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks, everybody.